friends are synths.
One of the nice things you can do if you've got friends that are into synthesizers as well is do a wee gear swap and try out some of the stuff they've got that you wouldn't necessarily ever buy yourself. And that's essentially what I'm going to be doing today. Well, at least I'm going to be making music with a synth that I've borrowed from my friend Al. He's taken away my Vermona Perfourmer, and in return I have got a hold of this nice thing, the Cobalt 8. The Cobalt 8 is an 8-voice polyphonic virtual analog synthesizer, and as far as I understand it, that means that it's a digital synth which replicates kind of analog synth behaviour. Now, it doesn't really end there with this, because this particular synthesizer doesn't just replicate kind of analog limitations, it also kind of extends the features that you might not be able to find on a traditional analog synth. Now, I'm not going to go into this synth in any detail in this video because, one, I don't really understand it at all at this point. As I mentioned, it's not necessarily something that I would gravitate towards myself. Newer synthesizers with menus and things I tend to find a bit too complex for my small brain, and this is really kind of the purpose of this video. There's lots of really interesting presets in here, and because I'm not a huge sound design person, when you've got lots of banks of presets, then I like to play about with them and find sounds that I like and then tweak them from there. So my plan basically for this video is that I'm going to try and make some music with the Cobalt 8 just without thinking too much about it. I'm going to find a whole bunch of presets that I like, and then I'm going to kind of build up a track, because it's the weekend, at least when I'm recording this, and I want to make some music rather than do something else. So the plan for this kind of process is I am going to do it really straightforward. I've got Logic here. It is running into my ERM multi-clock, which I talk about all the time, but that's how I sync up everything. The clock is then going out into this Behringer RD8 drum machine. Then I'm going to just record a bunch of patterns on this. At first it's just going to be a really basic pattern, and then I'm going to play some things on the Cobalt 8 because there are some really weird and wonderful presets in here. I should say this is also synced up to the clock, so it should all play in time, but if you listen to this, for example, this is a patch called Nerd Legion, I believe, and if you've got a Cobalt 8 it's 427. I haven't really changed that at all. Now, the only other thing I'll tell you before I start doing this is that the RD8 down here is running into my circuit bent Zoom 1201. This is kind of my secret weapon. It's a really interesting old rack effects unit that does crazy things with the bends that are in there. I got it from circuitbenders.co.uk. and it really fattens up the drums. So actually I like here, you know, what the drums sound like just now. I've just got a really basic pattern to start with. You can hear how it's really kind of crunching them up. If I turn it all the way to dry, that's just the RD8 on its own going through a compressor, and then with this in the mix, so you can hear how the drums get a really nice, crunchy, thick sound off of the Zoom 1201. So my plan right now is literally just to play that really basic drum beat and record a whole bunch of lines. I'm going to use the preset that I just showed you, number 427, and then I'm going to try find some other things and build it up after that. I don't think I'll use any other instruments, so this is purely going to be a track where I'm using the RD8 and also the Cobalt 8. This is a common way that I like to make music, is that I'll record a bunch of loops into Logic and then I'll arrange them later. Sometimes it is good fun to do things live and just improvise or create the patterns and then switch between them, but other times I like to build up the track so that it gives me more time to sit and think about it later, you know, think about composition and everything. So that's the plan for this, and aye. So that's a bunch of loops recorded for what I want to be the kind of main sound. I like that it's a bit kind of creepy and weird. I did a few different variations in there, and I obviously edited out all the various fuck-ups that I made when I hit the wrong keys and things like that, because this is YouTube and I can pretend to know what I'm doing if I want to. Now, what am I going to do next? I want to find some other patches in here that I can kind of layer things up with. I'm going to play through and see if I can find anything that's interesting. In my head, I want a kind of like, you know, an arpeggiation, a kind of filtery, not quite synth wavy, but like bassy to put under all of this stuff and kind of sit above the kick drum and all that. So that's what I'm going to look for. The nice thing about this synthesizer, or at least one of them, is that it does have a built-in arpeggiator, so I don't have to faff about with external sequencers or anything. I don't know about you, but I think that sounds surprisingly good already, actually. And that kind of, the one concern I have is that that kind of fills out all of the frequencies on the spectrum, because I've got the bass that's got that filter on it, and then I've got the drums and also the high kind of sound. So I'm going to go through and try find some pads and stuff like that now. My plan really is just to record a whole pile of loops and then put them together later and see. For those of you with a Cobalt 8 who are curious about the preset numbers, this is number 425, called The Pocket. So if you want to replicate my stunning work of art, then you can. I'm going to go eat now, actually. Sorry to shatter the illusion, but I'm going to do that and then come back and hopefully find some nice glistening pads. And then I also want to find a kind of other lead sound that I can throw in later and kind of chop and change things. And yeah, aye. I've now got 6 tracks of presets from the Cobalt 8, which I think is pretty good. I've got enough melodic stuff going on now, so what I'm doing is, if I squeeze this down here, I'm adjusting or playing about with patterns on the RD8. I'm just going to do some really basic stuff because I quite like just the basic drums with the kind of melody doing the heavy lifting, and plus I'm shite at rhythm anyway. So I've copied the first pattern over and now I'm just doing variations of it. So for example, that's the plan, and I'm just going to record the variations in and then go from there. With the drums done, all that's left now to do is to kind of cut things up on the computer, put them together, and then see if there's anything else that needs to be done. And it's as simple as that, or at least that's as simple as I'm going to make it, because I am a simple man. So now for the most kind of boring bit, the computer choppy, which I'm going to do on here. So. So that's the track just about finished. I've kind of arranged everything in Logic so it sounds like an evolving bit of music, and I quite like how the sound gradually changes through, through the track, I guess. But what I'm going to do now is add in a few wee bits and pieces, because there's some gaps in there that I want to like add in, just ear candy, or wee little bits of oral niceties to fill things out a bit. And this is what this synth is actually quite good for, because there's so many different interesting sounds in there, and ones that can be synced rhythmically, so they always kind of sound pretty cool. Anyway, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, it's probably worth saying that when I'm writing bits of music like this, these aren't tracks that I necessarily intend to do anything with. I think when I used to write music, I used to write it very much with the goal of putting it on an album, or like finishing everything to like a complete, 100% satisfaction kind of scenario. And now I don't do that anymore. I tend to just write a lot of music that I enjoy, experimenting with and listening to. And then if I was going to put anything together in some kind of quote unquote proper release, then I would spend a bit more time probably arranging things. But my preference for making music for my own enjoyment is just to make a whole bunch of sounds that sound good to me, that I can go back to and listen to, in a few months' time or whatever, and go, how the fuck did I do that? Like, that's my favourite thing, when you write something and you like, it sounds good, feels good, and then years later you've no idea how you made that sound. I think that's pretty cool. Anyway, I'm going to finish it and then I'll just play out the track. If you've got specific things you're interested in about the Cobalt 8, let me know, because I probably will do a feature in it at some point if I can figure out something worth saying. Although, I don't know. Is there ever anything worth saying? Maybe not.